Welcome back, Thrive Nation, to Thriving Beyond. We're excited today's guest, Beverly Sartain, shares her story of overcoming alcoholism, and we also cover relationships and spiritual psychology and much more.
Welcome to Thriving Beyond, the podcast with stories of thriving through when the obstacles are far from few. Here's your host, whose own story has been featured in Chicken Soup for the Soul, Vidal Cisneros Jr.
Welcome back to Thriving Beyond. We are with Beverly Sartain. Did I say your name correctly, Beverly?
You sure did.
Yes, right on. We're having a good start already. Beverly Sartain is on with us as a featured guest, and she's come from a place where she's gone through the adversity, and now she's on the other side of it, and she's actually counseling people that are going through alcohol and drug addiction. So this segment is going to be centered around, so anyone that's out there that's going through those kind of predicaments currently. Beverly, we're honored to have you. Welcome to Thriving Beyond.
Thank you so much. I am so privileged to be here with you and your listeners.
The pleasure's all ours. So let's sum up in one sentence or less what you do out in the world.
Ooh, one sentence or less. Well, I support men and women in learning how to live a sober, conscious, and purpose-driven life.
I love that. Purpose-driven life. Amen to that. So as a counselor and as somebody that's helping people that sometimes are struggling with their own adversity, and you have to step away from your own personal issues and put on this other hat, does that bring on any kind of adversity on your end where you feel like, oh my God, I need to stick to a routine. I need to figure out what kind of rituals I can create to help ignite your day and your morning so you're laser focused on giving your clients the best value?
You know, I have 10 years of recovery this year, and I am so in tune with my practice that I've got that all in place already. You know, every morning I've got my meditation, and I'm currently doing some tapping. So that's been part of my morning ritual. And I'm just so big. I mean, self-care is a part of what I share with people when I counsel and coach. And so it's really important to me to live and be the demonstration of the tools and techniques that I share with people. And specifically, I really love to work on the emotional, mental, spiritual, and physical level. So I always make sure that I have activities that I'm doing on a daily basis that support me around those 4 levels. And that's, of course, what I share with other people to do, because that can create a really strong foundation for any healing or recovery process.
And that makes perfect sense. That makes so much sense. So the next question is, this is where we kind of dive into the meat of the episode of Thriving Beyond. And I know you're a recovery counselor within the alcohol and drug abuse, correct?
Recovery. Yeah, I'm a recovery life coach, and I also am a certified alcohol and drug counselor. So I have both of those backgrounds that I bring to people.
Okay. Excellent. So as you do that throughout your career, going back maybe before that time, could you kind of paint the overall picture of one of the toughest life storms that you face? Because for the listeners, for Thrive Nation, it's more than just surviving for them. It's the thriving part that really helped. And there's a big difference between, the existing and the thriving. The thriving, you evolve, you become this new identity. So there's this reinvention part of you, right?
Yes.
But to experience the reinvention, we have to go through the storm, right? We have to go through that transformational stage.
Yes, absolutely. And it's like when you see where I am now, you would never believe where I used to be. It's a complete different experience, and there was a time where I was very emotionally and mentally unstable. I was trying to get back to grad school, and I literally couldn't even complete the application process because I was so emotionally and mentally unstable. I was a working professional. I actually worked as a helping professional, which created a lot more shame for me because I was helping other people improve their lives, but I wasn't doing the same for myself. And so that created a lot of shame for me and made it even harder to ask for help. But my anxiety and depression continued to get worse. I was literally waking up in the mornings already in, panic attacks. And I was still functioning enough to go to work, but I was starting to deteriorate there as well. And I was losing significant relationships. I was having legal consequences. And I got to the place where I started to think about killing myself. And I didn't want to really end my life. I just wanted to end the emotional suffering that I was experiencing. And I didn't know how. I really didn't know how. So that was kind of the big wake up call that I need to go get help because I'm getting to a point where I don't want to be here anymore. And so that's when I ended up to go see a therapist. And that's how my journey began.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
There is so much power in being transparent and showing the scars. As we both know, when you're going through that process, because me as well, I went through a situational alcoholic bout because of just all this tragedy that was happening in my life. And even though during the process of it, during the transformation, going through the therapy and the AA and all the counseling, I found that when we see that we're not alone and we're interacting within a group and working in like that group kind of session, we see this light bulb go off that, holy cow, I seriously am not alone. I'm sitting here with other people and holy cow, some of them are going through way worse stuff and some of them not so much. But regardless, they're still pushing forward. So I can get through this too. There comes that enlightenment, that light bulb moment, that aha moment. So was there an aha moment for you that helped empower you during that time that you remember vividly?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So my story is a little bit different. I can remember going to see the therapist on that first day. I just felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. Like I had just spoken my truth to somebody about how bad things really were for me on the inside. So that was a pivotal moment I can remember. But I didn't go the AA route or the 12-step or the rehab. And I actually found myself getting my master's degree in spiritual psychology. And so that was my community of people. It was an academic program, but it was more an experiential program. And so we really used our stories as we sat in the client seat and got counseled and, learned the tools and techniques. And so I would say the biggest aha moment for me was when I heard the spiritual principle, I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. And that was kind of when I was like, oh my goodness, I've been completely relating to my ego. I've been completely relating to my humanness as truth. And I have completely lost connection to something other than myself. And that was when things really started to shift for me because I was able to drop the shame. I was able to drop the, beating myself up and the unworthiness, all the stuff that I was really hanging on to and that I was really identifying with. I was starting to learn how to put that to rest. So that was the big shift that happened for me was when I started to learn different paradigms because that created the mindset shift that I needed to start to see myself in a different light.
Yes, you said a lot of just really good stuff in there. So for Thrive Nation out there listening, you might want to rewind that and just listen to every little bit of juicy content that she gave us because there's so many aha moments that happen when you're going through that struggle. And if you don't share the story end of it, it's hard to begin some of that therapeutic process within us. So thank you for sharing that. And speaking of a mantra, prayer, or affirmation, was there any other ones than the ones that you mentioned? Because you mentioned some really good ones that we are not these physical beings thinking we're having these spiritual, moments. It's the complete opposite, right? So is there another super powerful one that you had?
Yeah, I think that another one that was really big for me is that inner reality is a reflection of outer reality. Inner reality is a reflection of outer reality, or you can flip it. Outer reality is a reflection of inner reality. So when things look really messy outside of us, it's reflecting back to us that we're messy inside, or there's things that we need that are unresolved. We have unresolved issues inside of us that need to be addressed. They need to be acknowledged. They need to be healed. And so that, they're clear indicators of the work, the inner work that needs to be done. So that one was always really powerful for me too, because now my life, when I look at it externally, I'm like, okay, like it looks good. It feels good, and it's really reflecting the joy and the love and just the ease and the grace that I have within me now that I'm able to express, because I work on, clearing judgments that I have. I work on being with my feelings. It's just, I have a different way of relating to myself now than I ever did back then.
Amen. Our outside world is a reflection of our inner world. Abso-freaking-lutely.
Mm-hmm.
So next question, what is the best advice that you've received, Beverly, from a coach, mentor, or maybe a friend or family member?
Best advice that I've received. I think that just the best advice that I've ever received, I've had some really great mentors in my life. I haven't had a very strong family dynamic, so I really had to really look for people that I connected with and that wanted to help lift me up and who I really wanted to learn from. And so all of those people really encouraged me to be myself and to listen to my own inner guidance. And I feel like that was the best advice, because it wasn't about following somebody else's system. It was about going within myself and listening for inner guidance and following that. And that's why I've kind of walked a different path in my recovery, and is why now I share the tools and techniques that I've learned along the way, because there's so many people out there that are not jiving with traditional modalities. And I just want them to know that there's other ways to heal. There's other ways to recover. So I would just say that to them as well, to your listeners, to go within, listen. You're going to receive messages. What we do is we block those messages when we use substances, when we overeat, when we use relationships to get the love. So I would just encourage people to listen within and follow that guidance.
As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking of this affirmation that's, I guess, pretty wide with, I guess, personal development circles, is that all that I need is within me now, right? All that I need is within me now. And just keep saying that over and over and over. I remember that was one of the first affirmations that I learned when I first dove into personal development and personal growth.
That's cool. I've actually never heard it.
Okay. Right on.
So thanks.
Absolutely. You're welcome. So is there anything that you could share with us through your experience as a counselor and as a coach that could help somebody that's going through this struggle right now, and maybe give them 3 steps from some of your own experiences of as a coach and as going through the struggle as well?
Absolutely. It's hard to give just 3 steps. I will definitely, the first thing I would say is build a relationship with yourself. So this can be super counterintuitive, because people really want to go external and they want to shift things around there. They want to get a different relationship or get a new job or move to a different place. And what's really important is that you go inward. How is your relationship with yourself? So it's essential to have a better relationship with yourself if you want to see better results in the world. And so I always share this with people, because, you can't have that relationship that you want to have with a partner if you're not relating to yourself in a very good way. You can't have that purpose-driven life if you're not even connecting and listening to your own inner guidance and your own wisdom. So it's so important to start there. That's where I started. I started with okay, I am disconnected from myself. So how can I get to know myself better? What are my strengths? What are my needs? What are my wants? And what are the thoughts that get in the way of me being my best self? What are the feelings that I need to learn how to manage and work with so that I can be the best version of myself? So that's always the first thing for me, is start to have a relationship with yourself so that you can start treating yourself better, because that makes the inner work much easier when you're already relating to yourself in a different way. I'd say the second thing that I think is really important is to resolve what is unresolved inside of you. Resolve what is unresolved inside of you. So, I can think of my own life. There was many unresolved issues. My father was an alcoholic and he had died from cirrhosis of the liver when I was 24. I ended up getting sober at 26 years old. But I had some things I had to resolve. Even though my father was dead, I still had some work I needed to do around that. And I am at peace and acceptance of our relationship now. I'm at peace and acceptance of the choices that he made in his life. And I'm at peace and acceptance of the choices I made around alcohol and drugs in my life now. So that was one unresolved issue. We all have many unresolved issues, right? So it's about figuring out what is unresolved inside of me. Where does my peace get disturbed? What are the things that really upset me? Those are all indicators of things that need to be healed and looked at, right? And then I'd say the third thing that I think is super important, and these are all connected, is this self-love piece. So learning how to have more compassion for yourself, learning how to have self-responsibility, and learning how to self-forgive, how to do a self-forgiveness process. Because I hear so many people clinging to this past story and identity of themselves that they don't like, and being unwilling to forgive themselves for their past. And if you're unwilling to forgive yourself for the past, you're going to stay connected to it. And you're going to keep creating situations that you don't want. So compassion, responsibility, and forgiveness for the self, these are all self things, are really important to the process.
Thank you for sharing that, Beverly. So I'm going to highlight for the listeners out there, build a relationship with yourself first. So important. Second, resolve what is unresolved inside of you. So second, resolve what is unresolved inside of you. Super, super important. And then the third thing, self-love first, and then move into self-responsibility and self-forgiveness. And you are so right on, Beverly, with the regrets, the life regrets that we all have. These life regrets, they don't leave us until we almost have to bring them outside of us into like the physical form. That's what I've learned through some of my therapy and going through different techniques, is that when I write it and maybe even burning it without burning the house down, mind you.
Right.
The burning ritual, it does help. I've heard a lot of women that use that. And with men, I've witnessed that it's been maybe walking across hot burning coals. That's something that I experienced, almost like igniting, or not almost, but igniting that like warrior sense of you, where you're awakening the physical to unleash it on this external villain or external enemy, right? So maybe taking a punching bag and just putting all the fears on a piece of paper and taping it to that punching bag and just going at it, right?
I love that. Yep.
That's
release.
Yes,
right?
Release it. Bring it into the physical form and just go at it. And also, I've seen which is really popular with AA circles, is where a head counselor takes on a role that is the protagonist to the person that's going through the therapeutic process. So, for example, if you're upset with your parents, well, then the lead therapist acts as if they are and takes on the vent. So the person vents to them and talks to them as if they're standing there. So that's also been very helpful on the men's side. So you can see there's different modalities when it comes to male and female, and I'm sure you've noticed that too. So if there's anything you'd love to add, I would love to hear it.
Yeah, I think for me, like another way that I like to share this with people is victim consciousness versus creator consciousness. So it's like when you're telling yourself the story about, I can't recover, I'm a loser, I can't do this, like I'm never going to live my potential, I'm awful, like that is victim consciousness. And so are you empowering yourself with your story? Are you disempowering yourself with your story? Right? And we have to get to this place where we take responsibility for what we're holding in our consciousness. And that was part of my process because I was very negative. I was very self-critical. And I realized that if I keep thinking these thoughts, that there's no way I'm going to get sober and there's no way I'm going to maintain any sense of sobriety. And so I like to share that because it's just a good way to kind of look at it. It's like, am I in victim consciousness? Or if you don't like that word victim, because sometimes that word bumps into stuff for people, just am I disempowering myself or am I empowering myself? And we want you to be in empowerment. We want you to be telling yourself a story that is empowering you. Like, I'm learning how to love myself. I'm learning how to live a sober life. I'm learning how to thrive in my life. And so I'm listening to podcasts. I'm reading books. I'm connecting with coaches or counselors or other support people. That's the new story that you want to be stepping into. We've all been through stuff. We've all had a past. But if we keep ruminating and repeating and holding on to that as our identity, you're just going to create more of what you don't want. And I don't want to see that for you. I want you to be able to create the potential that I know is inside of you.
So well said, Beverly. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What you focus on expands. That's so important. So because as we mentioned before, our outer world is a reflection of our inner world. So what we consistently focus on, if we're focused on why me, why now, why is this happening to me? And that was exactly what I was asking myself. Because when you're in the thick of the storm, you're questioning everything. You're in survival mode. So to turn that survival fight and flight mechanism off, which we have embedded in our DNA, we have to ask better, empowering questions. So a better question would be, why not me? Like, who the heck am I?
I love that.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
I always say, what's the learning available for me here?
Yes.
What's the learning available for me here?
Yep.
And that's the taking responsibility of, like, what am I supposed to get? Where's my value out of this? Where can I improve or make a better choice for myself in this situation?
Exactly.
Yeah, life is for learning. Every experience, we have something valuable to learn, and it will support us in growing and evolving if that's how we look at it.
Absolutely. And as a high achiever and as other people that I've worked with that are high achievers, there's almost like this entitlement that this should not ever be happening to me. Like no.
Who says, right? Who says?
And then that's when, God, source, the universe, whatever your religious makeup is, steps in and says, why not you? Like, who are you to think you cannot be humbled? And that's what I learned through my process when I switched that why me to why not me. Like, if this can happen to me, it can happen to anybody. So let's find the lesson, like you said. Let's find the message. Let's create a new story and let's help others and be humble. That's the most important thing I learned is stay humble, man.
You got it. Beautifully put.
Okay. Is there anything else that you'd like to share that you see going on with people out there struggling with codependency? I know codependency with alcohol, you could talk about that all day, probably till you're blue in the face. And same thing with drugs and other addictions. But is there also codependency in some of the relationships that you see where people are always looking for something to be codependent, whether it's a drug or a person or just like feeling needed, from the outside world?
Yeah, I think codependency comes up almost every single day that I coach people. So it's a topic that I hear a lot about, and it's certainly a topic that I've experienced personally too. I mean, I was somebody who always used relationship to fill my void. So I really got the loving from other people, and therefore I didn't ever give it to myself. And so that's why it was such a big part of my process to not try to get the love from other places and to learn how to give it to myself. But I think like one of the big things that I see with codependency is, it's not just in relationship with other people. Like, you can become codependent on meetings. You can become, I hear people say like, I relapsed because I stopped going to meetings, and that can be a very codependent thing to say, that it's because of the meetings that you're staying sober. That shows me that you haven't done the inner work that you need to do to make yourself reliant on you and your connection to higher source or higher power, higher self is what I call it. So we have to make sure we're not depending on all these external things to make us feel okay, right? That's codependency. And so whether you're doing that with a relationship, or you're doing that with your family, or you're doing that with your work, a lot of people have that workaholism, and they get a lot of value and a lot of worth from their work. And then if something happens there, they feel crushed, they feel devastated, right? So I try to teach people, like, you want to be connected to yourself, your true self. You want to be feeling that self-worthiness within you. And then you bring that to whatever you do. But your self-worth and your self-concept is not defined or dependent on these external things. So that's what I would want to share about codependency.
Thank you. That's super important. And to give the listeners, Thrive Nation, the best value, I want to be the devil's advocate.
Yes, do it.
And come at you from a different angle, different perspective, and kind of pierce into what some of the listeners that maybe don't agree with the therapeutic side. Because I know here in the US, where I'm from and where you're from, it isn't welcomed as much as it is in other countries. We want to take care of our health, but we don't want to take care of our emotional and mental health, which is disheartening to me. So as a person that's gone through divorce, separation, and betrayal, I now see that everybody coming into any kind of long-term relationship should look for an outside professional source, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now, as the person that doesn't agree with me or agree with your professional counseling, what would you say to them when they say, look, it's a bunch of garbage. I don't feel that I need it. That's only for people that are really messed up in their relationships, or really messed up because they're dependent on alcohol and drugs. And I'm not there. I'm a social drinker. I'm okay. Yeah, my marriage could be better. My relationship could be better. But you know what? We're fine. We're going to make it through. What would you say?
I usually just try to meet people where they're at. And so if somebody felt like they weren't ready to seek that kind of extra support from either a professional or a support group of people, I would just encourage them to continue to look at themselves, see if there's anything that I usually ask the person, like, what do you feel really good about in your life right now? And what do you not feel is going so great? And then when they share that part that they feel is not so great, then I just tell them that that's the area that they could focus on. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that's what I would do in that kind of a situation if somebody was resistant to getting that extra support.
Right. And unfortunately, they're not going to meet you halfway. They're just, because there's this, like you mentioned, paradigm shift that has to happen. And unfortunately, they have to be broken. It's almost like something serious and traumatic has to happen in their relationship for them to want to change. And unfortunately, with men, it's always when it's too late, because the women emotionally are done.
Right. You're so right. Yeah. And I usually try to talk about resistance, because that is what that is. And every one of us has resistance that comes up. And so it's just a matter of having awareness about it and being conscious of it. And not everybody has that awareness and consciousness, so when people are not open, when they're resistant, I just hold a loving and non-judgmental and compassionate space, because that's just who I am. And I just meet them where they are. I talk about what they want to talk about. And then I just share some, like I said, I would just ask that question of, what do you feel like is going really well? And then what are the areas that you think you need to focus on? And then there's a lot of people, they want to have their own process with it. It's called, everyone needs the dignity of their own process. So we can't push people. We can't make people. This is my own perspective here. Everybody needs the dignity of their own process. And sometimes, like you said, it becomes too late.
Right. Right. And unfortunately, that happens more times than not. So let's kind of switch to one other question.
Sure.
Because I really want to give value to some of the younger listeners out there that maybe just started off in a long-term relationship, and they're in like maybe year 2 or 3, or in year of the marriage 2 or 3. And they're going through struggles. They're going through hangups. What is your best advice to them with anything that maybe they're feeling that they need as coping mechanisms? So they're starting to go to the drinking more, right? They're not full-fledged alcoholics, but they're starting to look to different avenues, different addictions. Maybe they're looking at porn more now. They're not getting it from a significant other because they want to fulfill fantasies. Yes, us guys, I'm talking to you. Yes, man, we want those fantasies fulfilled, but it's not real when we're sitting there focused on that kind of stuff. Like, we need to work on ourselves in order to get our relationship back on track. So I see this happen many, many times. I've been through it, and I feel disgusted when I'm not meeting my relationship where it is, and being in a loving relationship where I don't have to depend on some outside fantasy to fulfill my need, which is just, it's superficial. There's nothing there that's real.
Right. Absolutely. Yes. Yes. I love this question. Like, relationship is so important to me. And that was actually my why when I got sober at 26, is that I wanted to have a healthy relationship with a partner. And that was what I really wanted at that time. And so I, ended up meeting my husband about a year into my sobriety. I was a little bit over a year at that point. And I had to communicate to him that I was sober. And I told him basically, like, hey, if you want to be with me, like, I can't have somebody that's, doing drugs or coming home drunk, or that's just not going to work. And so we've been, married now 5 years, been together 10 years, and he's been sober for almost 9 years since we met. So, it's been a really great relationship. And one of the things that we have done that I highly recommend to people is we do weekly kind of check-ins, and we've done that since we first got together. And I still do the check-ins with him, because you want to check in with your partner. It doesn't have to be a super formal thing. You can when you first start. It was more formal when we first started to do it. We would set aside like 30 minutes on a Sunday, and we would just check in, like, hey, is everything good? Is there anything I've done that we need to talk about that's not cool for you? Is there any, are you happy with everything? Are you satisfied with everything, including sex? That's a big thing to talk about, to make sure that you're on the same page with your partner when it comes to cleaning the house, having a sexual relationship, finances, all these different things that are really important part of relationships that can go unnoticed or can just kind of fall by the wayside if we're not being super aware and conscious of them. And that really has helped our relationship so much, because if there's something that I've done, then we can communicate and talk it through, versus letting the resentment build, letting the anger build, and that's when I think people start to like veer off into these destructive behaviors, because they're not having good communication. They're not being heard by their partner. It doesn't mean like everything that he says that that he would like me to do is that I do it. It just means that we compromise, we talk things through. He gets to be heard. I get to be heard. And it's really been such a helpful tool. I love the book Conscious Loving. That's another fantastic book if you're working on a conscious, co-committed relationship, if that's important to you. That's a fantastic book. And then another thing that was really helpful is the love languages. I never read the book, but we both took the survey, which is, free on their website. And it tells you what love language you are. And so my husband and I happen to be the same love language. Our number one love language is quality time. And so we both give that to each other because it's our love language. But a lot of people do not have the same love language as their partner. And that's important to know, because somebody might want quality time where someone else might need affirmations or praise. And so that's a very different way of communicating. And so it's helpful to know what your partner's love language is so that you can be supporting them the way that they want to be supported.
Great information. Fantastic information.
Mm-hmm.
So the book is one of the books that you mentioned was Conscious Loving, correct?
Yeah, by Gay and I think her name's Catherine Hendricks or Katie Hendricks. Yeah, they're a couple and they wrote the book together.
Got it. And the other one was Love Languages?
Yes, and I forget the gentleman's name that created that.
No worries. We'll have that in the episode description. All right. This has been great. And I know as men, we don't always want to play down to that alpha male inside of us sometimes. Alpha male mentality, like, oh man, I'm not gonna read this book, dude. Conscious Loving, come on, man. That sounds
I know.
Foo. Get out of here, man. You're going to tell me that I should start watching some of the shows with my girlfriend.
Can I tell you a story about this? Because I have
Sure.
a great story. I actually just had a couple that I was working with. I was coaching this woman individually, and then I started to coach her partner for, like 6 sessions or something. And I had suggested the book to them, and they both started to read it. And then when I started to talk to him, he was just like, I was kind of resistant to the book a little bit. And then it ended up being that he freaking loved that book. And he's like, I have learned so much from this book. I wish I would have had this book sooner because it would have helped me in so many of my relationships that didn't go well. So that's that thing. Just notice if you have resistance inside of you. It's just resistance. Like there's just something inside that's kind of saying like, no. But just move beyond that. Like try the tools, try different things and see what resonates with you. And then that can help you create like your own practice that you want to do. So I always encourage people to try things first and then see what resonates with them.
Absolutely. I agree. First step though, you got to be open to it, and don't wait until everything's broken, man. That's most guys. We wait till all the damage has been done. And we've created a monster that's called our significant other. And we're like, how do I calm the monster down? Dude, it's a little too late for that, man.
Right. Exactly. I mean, you just heard my story of like starting these types of weekly check-ins when I was dating somebody, so, and then that led into marriage. And so we've been doing them for a long time, but we have a fantastic relationship and marriage because of it, so you don't want to wait too long and wait till things are falling apart. Like start now. Why can't you start now? So I would highly recommend that to people to just start working on it now.
Absolutely. You want to avoid the breakup, the separation, whatever it is you got to go through to get back to where you were when you first met that person. And I was also going to mention a lot of men, not only do they wait till it's absolutely broken, but there might be, a lot of men right now might be wondering or asking, dude, how can I do this? Like how? Well, it's not the how. You're asking the wrong question. You're not there yet, because when you want to fix it, you will do everything in your power.
Right.
You know exactly what to effing do. Like the how is the wrong question. Ask, do you want to wait now or when you're separated, broken up, or going through a divorce? I'm gonna let that marinate again. All right, I'm gonna let that marinate some more. Do you want to go through that now, the therapy process, the therapeutic process, and work on you to make your relationship better, or do you want to wait until you're broken up, you're in pain, she's leaving you, she's probably cheating on you, or maybe you've already done that because the relationship was messed up. So you're separated, going through a divorce, talking to lawyers already, and that is pure anguish. Are you going to wait till then, or do you want to do it now?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to let that sink in with all the guys or the females, because a lot of females out there nowadays act like men. I'm just going to be honest. Let's just keep it real. I like to keep it real sometimes. So thank you so much, Beverly. Let's not digress, but thank you so much for coming on Thriving Beyond and sharing the stories and a lot of your personal stuff. And that's what we want to see more often is people share their real side. So where can our listeners connect best with you?
Yeah, you can connect with me in a couple different places. The best place is probably Facebook, and my business is called Recovery Life Management. But, feel free to message me. I am super big on connecting with people, hearing your stories, hearing your challenges, and I'm all about offering support and accountability. So I just love connecting with people. That's been part of my journey too, is like learning how to connect with myself has now turned into learning how to share myself and express myself and connect with other people. So if you feel called to message me, please do. And of course, I'm on Google Plus and LinkedIn and some other places, but Facebook and my website, recoverylifemanagement.com, are the best places to connect with me.
There you have it. Connect with Beverly Sartain over at recoverylifemanagement.com and learn more about her and reach out to her and see if she can bring more value into your life as she's done on this episode. So thank you once again, Beverly. We enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. So as always, keep going, keep growing, and keep thriving, because it's way freaking better than just surviving. Until next time, my friends, peace.
Thanks for listening. For recaps and to claim bonus gifts, head over to thriving beyond podcast.com. Keep thriving.